So Russia in the 18th century became a great power in Europe, thanks largely to the efforts of Peter the Great and his victory over Sweden. They already had been expanding east, but now, if they looked to push further west, they essentially had to pick an enemy, or at least a direction to do so. There were three major powers that blocked any expansion west: Sweden, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and the Ottoman Empire. So Russia needed to first of all pick a target, and then form alliances accordingly. However, alliances in the 18th century were a strange affair, and could change on a whim. For instance, in the 1730s, the French and Spanish fought against the Russians, Austrians and Prussians in the Polish War of Succession. 10 years later, France, Prussia and Spain fought against the Austrians, Russians and British in the War of Austrian Succession. Then these alliances shifted in 1756 during the Diplomatic Revolution. This took place just before the 7 Years' War, which saw Prussia and Britain fight against the Austrians, French and Russians. This was all part of the stately quadrille, shifting alliances all designed to keep the balance of power in Europe. Now, Russia lost the 7 Years' War, but just because their leader died. This is because they were occupying large sections of Prussia, but then Peter III came to the throne in 1762 and just pulled Russia out of the war because he was an admirer of Prussia. But he didn't rule for very long. He was removed from power by his Prussian wife Catherine the Great later that year, and it's probably no surprise that there was a strong pro-Prussian faction within the royal court. And one of the leaders of this pro-Prussian faction was Nikita Ivanovich Benin. He wanted to create an alliance with Prussia, Sweden and the United Kingdom. The Polish would also be part of this alliance, but would act more like a puppet of the Prussians and the Russians, as they would make sure that their royal candidate would be elected king. And this agreement played a prominent role in the first partition of the Commonwealth in 1772. But this alliance was chiefly aimed at the Austrian-French alliance, and only really Prussia joined it. Then it all began to unravel in 1777, when Benin was replaced by Grigory Potemkin. He completely shifted Russia's focus away from the north and to the south in the Ottoman Empire. And this is when their plans to restore the Byzantine Empire, otherwise known as the Greek Plan, began to take hold. Potemkin and Catherine the Great weren't the first Russians to want to take Constantinople and restore the Byzantine Empire. For instance, Peter the Great, despite often fighting in the north, was allegedly determined to retake it. A German soldier who fought for Peter named Burkhard Christoph von Munich said, "Until the hour of his death, Peter's grand design had always been to conquer Constantinople, to chase the infidel Turks and Tartars out of Europe, and thus re-establish the Greek monarchy." Again, as I said before, this makes a bit of sense. Ever since the fall of Constantinople, the Russians began claiming that Moscow was in fact the Third Rome, or in other words, the successors of the Roman Empire. This is also why the kings adopted the title Tsar, which literally just means Caesar. Also, way back in 1472, Ivan III married Princess Sophia of the Byzantine Empire after the fall of Constantinople, and adopted the double-headed eagle as the symbol of Russia. Going back to Peter the Great, he launched the Azov campaigns against the Turks, and captured a port on the Black Sea, putting them slightly closer to their ultimate goal. Then the Ottomans lost more land at the beginning of the 18th century, notably Hungary, marking the beginning of their decline. Then, in the 1730s, the Austrians and Russians united to fight against the Ottomans. During this war, Marshal Munich crossed the Dnieper to try and strike at the Turkish capital, but the Austrians suffered a defeat and withdrew from the war. This is when Russia, under the likes of Benin, focused more towards the north for the next few decades. But then it all changed during the partition of Poland. During this, many Poles fled into the Ottoman Empire, and war between Russia and the Turks broke out in 1768. This was a resounding success for Catherine, who annexed land around the Black Sea, and made the Crimean Khanate an independent state. But it was only really independent in name, as it fell largely under Russian influence. Potemkin in fact served in this war, quickly rose through the ranks afterwards, and began to turn Russia's attention south. In between Russia and their newly conquered lands in modern-day Ukraine lay the Cossacks on the wild fields. These once served as a buffer state between the powers, but now it was dividing the Russian Empire. So Potemkin sent forces into the region, destroyed the Cossacks, and renamed the area New Russia. This was clearly a comparison to New England and New France, and highlighted Russia becoming a modern colonial power. Potemkin was then given a free hand in bringing this territory under Russian control. Many Europeans were asked to come and settle in the area, and new towns were created. They then annexed the Crimean Khanate and duplicated the process there. Greeks in particular, as you'd expect, were welcome settlers. For instance, one of them was Ioannis Vavarkis. He had rebelled against the Ottomans during the War of 1768. And in total, 3,000 Greeks would settle there over the next century. But the largest group of settlers came from neighbouring Romania. Plus, many of the new towns that they created highlighted their ultimate ambition just from their name alone. Odessa in Ukraine, for instance, got its name from the Greek city of Odessos. This was an ancient Greek colony established on the Black Sea, but today it is believed to have been in the same location as Varna in Bulgaria, not modern-day Odessa. Otherwise, there's Kherson, which was named after Chersonius, an ancient Greek colony in Crimea. But just looking at a map of Ukraine, you can see a number of towns ending with the suffix pol, coming from the Greek word for city, polis. There's Sevastopol, Mariupol, Nikopol, and in neighbouring Moldova, or Transnistria, there's Tiraspol. Meanwhile, Catherine the Great had already handpicked the future Byzantine emperor, her own grandson, Grand Duke Constantine. He was born in 1779, and, as many of you could probably tell by his name, he was named after Constantine the Great. In fact, when he was born, he was raised by Greek maids, and they made commemorative coins, saying "Back to Byzantium" on them. As the British diplomat in Russia said, Prince Potemkin's mind is constantly taken up with the idea of creating an empire in the east. He has managed to fascinate the empress with these feelings, and she christened the newborn Grand Prince Constantine, gave him as a nursemaid a Greek by the name of Helen, and talks in her own circles about how to place him on the throne of the Eastern Empire. So a new emperor had been selected, a slight fascination with Greek culture and history was spreading across Russia, and all in power wanted to bring back the Byzantine Empire. All they had to do now was retake Constantinople. So, in 1787, Catherine the Great went on a trip to Crimea, in order to inspect her newly conquered territories. During this trip, it was believed that Potemkin hastily built villages en route to show that the region was developing rapidly. This is where the term Potemkin village comes from, but it was largely just a story. However, on this trip, she met with Joseph II of Austria, and the two agreed to form an alliance aimed at carving up the Ottoman Empire. These two nations were then given their cause for war in 1787, when the Ottomans demanded that the Russians give back their Black Sea territory. So, war was declared, and Suvorov, one of Russia's greatest ever generals, led the invasion and captured Ishmael on the Danube River. Austria, meanwhile, wasn't having the same level of success, and to make matters worse, the other European powers were unwilling to see Russia and Austria gain so much, and revolutions were springing up across Europe. The French Revolution obviously began in 1789, but also in Austrian-controlled Belgium, people began to rise up. The main threat to Austria, however, appeared to the north, as the Prussians signed a defensive alliance with the Ottomans, and the prospect of fighting a war on two fronts worried the Austrians. And then the Austrian Emperor died. The new Emperor, Leopold II, was more distracted by events happening over in France, and he decided to make peace, achieving very little in the war. This in turn forced Russia to abandon the war in 1792. Potemkin had already died the previous year, and Catherine died a few years later. Both nations would then become embroiled in the Napoleonic Wars that followed, and the goal of restoring the Byzantine Empire sort of died along with Potemkin and Catherine. Russia continued to fight the Ottomans over the next century, with the ultimate goal of taking Constantinople and securing the Straits. The closest they ever came to taking it was during the War of 1878, when Russian troops had marched south to take Sofia, Edirne, and were poised to take the city itself. But the British Navy rushed to the defence of the Ottomans and pressured the Russians to make peace. Even the Soviets continued to apply pressure on Turkey to allow their ships to pass through the Straits. This, the Turkish Straits crisis, as well as Soviet claims to the eastern parts of Turkey, eventually pushed Turkey into joining NATO. But from Russia's perspective anyway, the dream of restoring the Byzantine Empire died in the 18th century. Now this is just one attempt of many to bring back an old empire. For instance, over the centuries many people tried to bring back the Roman Empire, including Mussolini in the 20th century. Or, of course, there's also been numerous attempts to bring back the Caliphate. But can you think of any lesser known attempts to bring back an old empire? Leave yours in the comments below.
Listen carefully to that opening prophecy. It would tell you what exactly I'm about to tell you today. So the devil is in the details. A one world church. It is an extraordinarily arrogant belief system, attempting to appease the demands, represents a kind of cultural suicide. Harmony purchased at the price of freedom of speech is the kind of bargain that ends with the devil unscathed and everything else in flames, especially if you're not part of the first flight, and I'm talking about rapture. Now, the signing ceremony between the Pope Francis and Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyib was more of a staged play just to convince the world that Christianity and Muslims are in harmony by arriving hand in hand in a symbol of interfaith brotherhood. This document that they were signing and so-called celebrating boldly declares that the diversity of religions that we see in the world was willed by God. And then I asked myself, where does it say that in the Bible? In essence, this is saying that it is the will of God that there are hundreds of different religions in the world and that they are all acceptable in His sight. We know that the elite want a one-world religion, but to see the most important clerics from both Catholicism and Islam make such a dramatic public push for it is absolutely disturbing and a confirmation of prophecy fulfilled. So, the one world religion described in Revelation chapter 17 verses 1 to 18 as the great harlot will be a part of the end time scenario. The term harlot is used throughout the Old Testament as a metaphor for a false religion, and that is my point of discussion today. So how does that become the will of God? According to Pope Francis, I said it before on my show. I told you, I said, get out of the United Nations now. I even asked the question, what does it cost to leave the United Nations? Now, the political United Nations I was referring to at that time has now got a spiritual equivalent, a new world order religion, the United Religions, a major development in the coming kingdom of the Antichrist. So the end times are unfolding before our very eyes, people. Things are speeding up very quickly. If you blink, you'll miss it. This might be Chrislam, a new foundation of the coming one world religion. The Bible says will assemble in the last days. One world religion refers to the merging of all existing religions to establish a single global religion. So I'm talking about Christianity, Buddhists, you name it. They've all got all sorts of different names, all coming there together and say, we are one. We don't even read the same Bible. We don't even have the same beliefs. We have different practices. One wonders how then that becomes one. The Catholic Church might call the shots, and Islam will provide the muscle with their tens of millions of jihad warriors. Now there will be martyrs for Chrislam under the command of the Roman king. Though usually not enforced, teaching that Jesus is the only God is considered to be an act of insulting Allah or the Prophet Muhammad. And offenders can be subject to imprisonment for 5 or more years, fined from 215 dirhams, which is equivalent to about $68,100, to 2 million dirhams, and Christians may be deported, depending on where they are. Now, to add to the confusion of the bringing, understanding and, of course, the tolerance, Sunni Muslim leader Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyib, who is widely touted as a moderate Muslim, strongly believes that Muslims who convert from Islam to any other religion, including Christianity, that they want to include in this one world religion, by the way, should be killed. So if the idea of the one world religion headquarters is to bring tolerance and understanding and, of course, peace, then why build it in a Muslim country where conversion is illegal? And why do it together with a Muslim cleric who teaches that Muslim apostates should be killed? Isn't that the opposite of a tolerance and understanding?
Yes, it is. I don't agree. It's their false end of the world prophecy. It's all fake. It's fake in the sense that it's not. It's all just another man-made construct. This new world religion is supposed to start this year, if it hasn't started already. It's supposed to start this year. Let's see. The Catholic Muslim Interfaith Council, created by Pope Francis, announces a new Chrislam headquarters opening in 22. Let's see. Let's see. Vatican News. Vatican seems all excited about it. Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi to open in 2022. Let me go back here. Let's see. It's time first to see what happens there in the past month. March 21st, 2020, the Abrahamic project that's being carried out in the Catholic is reportedly ACC. What? Project is over 20% complete. That means it can't open this year. So it's not going to open this year. There's, of course, I'm sure there's a lot of politics and money involved. The Abraham Family House project that's being carried out in Sadia, whatever. Oh, come on. You don't want to look at yours. Completed with the inauguration ceremony is set to take place the end of the year, although it's only 20%. Well, yeah, interfaith. I don't know how you found common ground with, at the end of the day. I don't know how you do it. Abraham House, which encloses a synagogue, a church, and a mosque in a single complex, which is scheduled to be inaugurated in 2022. I guess it's 20% complete. The Higher Committee of Human Fraternity, the HCHF, said that in a statement Tuesday, the committee, which is also supervising the project, said that it is inspired by the 2019 document on human fraternity. And this would be the possibly the journey of His Holiness Pope Francis to the United Arab Nations. A document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. Let's see what it has to say. Faith leads a believer to see in the other a brother or sister to be supported and loved. Through faith in God, who has created the universe, creatures, and all human beings equal on account of His mercy. Now, the universe, creatures, and all human beings equal on account of His mercy, or is it just the believer, human beings? Believers are called to express this human fraternity by safeguarding creation and the entire universe, supporting all persons, especially the poorest and those most in need. Sounds really great, except for one thing. You are not. Our responsibility is not to safeguard the universe, as we can never leave from this enclosed system, as we've been told several times by those in the know. So we have really no influence on the lights in the heavens. And if you do your own research, you're going to figure out something that's universally true. The moon and the sun are the same size, and they're not, hundreds of thousands of miles away concerning the moon, and 93 million miles away concerning the sun. One of the wonderful things that you can do with number magic is you can make up a distance and make it look longer or shorter, or its proper distance. But as I have proven in filming that which is in the stars, which I've had videos of it before. Maybe I'll throw something in there. There's no way in hell I could film those entities in that star if it's the sun. First of all, if it's a star is the question. Secondly, there's no way I could film the entities in the star or the planet that I've filmed if they were light years away. The only way that could happen is they're a lot closer, and they're not what the high priests, the craft of scientism, have been telling us all these years. Of course, they don't want to tell you the truth, right? This transcendental value served as the starting point for several meetings characterized by a friendly and fraternal, and it's very fraternal, it's very Freemasonic as well. You'll find that most leadership in the world, whether they're Muslim or Catholics or other Christians or Jews, they're all Freemasons. There's their fraternity. Several meetings characterized by a faith and fraternal atmosphere where we share the joys, sorrows, and problems of our contemporary world. You share it all, do you? We did this by considering scientific and technological progress, therapeutic achievements, of course, therapeutic achievements, yeah. What year was this written again? 2019, right before the agenda COVID agenda 19. Kakaku 19. So he already is talking about therapeutics before all this. A digital era, was he talking about central bank digital currency. The mass media has to be propaganda and communication. What's going to corrupt propaganda, which we've seen in the course of this time period in the past 3 years, the worst amount of deception and lies that I've seen in my lifetime. Phew. The volume of censorship and lying and deceiving is ridiculous. We reflected also on the level of poverty. Sure you have. Conflict and sufferings. So what do? Start a war with Constantinople, New Constantinople, which is Moscow, and it's the same old thing. Who's going to be Caesar? Whose empire is going to rule the rest? Is it going to be the eastern head of Moscow with its two-headed phoenix, like the same thing you find in Scottish Freemasonry, which is interesting in its own right, don't you think? Or is it going to be the diviner of the serpent, or the diviners of the serpent, and the fraternity or the brotherhood of the serpent itself, the snake, in which they have made an allegiance with their fraternal order of the Muslims and the people you're not allowed to talk about. And so what's going to come down, that's why you see what's going on over there in the Ukraine. It's the same old battleground that they've had for a couple hundred years, as each warring faction coming out of Rome, Italy, or the Vatican, which is a separate city-state, I should say, and Moscow, Constantinople, the new Constantinople. Constantinople, the empire headquarters was moved to Moscow, and it's been a constant battle over who's going to be the big boss, big brother. And unfortunately, that is the case, folks. Now, most will just ignore it and just avoid it and don't want anything to deal with it. And you see over and over again the past month, 2 months, talk about this Ukraine thing. Very little is anybody talking about the quote-unquote religious aspect of it. But let's remember, we're talking about 2 monarchies warring against each other. With other smaller but very influential either monarchies or oligarchs, uber rich, and you see that there's the Zionist element in all this. Interesting when it comes to the prime ministers of over there in Israel. The vast majority of the prime ministers are Ukrainian, Jewish Ukrainians. And we look at what's going on in the Ukraine for their Jewish leadership. Yet, it's the same token, we see this same unholy alliance between those that they want to call neo-Nazis or just third generation, fourth generation Nazis, which really is nothing more but foot soldiers for the Western leg or wing of the Roman Empire. And people seem to make it right over their head. I mean, even Hitler said that as far as the SS and the party, the Nazis, the party was mimicked, and it got its inspiration from the Jesuits. And it makes you wonder who's actually in charge over there in the Vatican, and also in the Exchequer, the inner city of London. We obviously know that there's a huge influence when it comes to what's going on in the Middle East and about the people we're not allowed to talk about. But their heavy influence on the banking and financial institutions and how politics and how they bought their way into these positions. And the nepotism is so disgusting. You see throughout the Western European or the Western wing of the Roman Empire, which the dot, that white dot in the middle of the black half of the yin yang. Think of the yin yang as this. The black part is the wing of the Western Roman Empire, and the white one is the Eastern wing of the Roman Empire. Continually feuding, dancing to and fro, who will have their king as Pontifex Maximus on the throne. And it really is about this. And there's a reason why Putin resurrected what so desperately the Jesuits, along with the unspeakable banking system of the West and their own terrorists, is they created the Bolshevik Revolution and created what is called communism, which is inspired by the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith, or the Inquisition, and the reduction camps. And believe me, they're coming here. They're coming everywhere. In order to bring this population down to a more manageable level for the Roman Empire, most of us slaves have to go one way or the other. And they're going to do it in a technocratic way, a way in which they're going to use scientific, technical, therapeutic, digital, mass media, and communication instrumentations to inflict the pain and suffering and death of billions of us. This is all part of the Jesuit oath. This is all part of the what's the other one? The protocols of the Z group, which you'll find that they're all in bed together. So to make you think that it's this group or the other group or the other group, but it's really about understanding the major geopolitics and what it's really about. And it's never gone away, and it never will go away. And that is, who will put their guy as Pontifex Maximus, whether Pope or Patriarch, the king. And the king wears his crown, even if he wants to wear a beanie cap once in a while. It's fascinating, the twisting of these words, but if you look clearer and into what's really going on, nothing has changed. Now, they did a really good job through learning against learning and brainwashing to think that this all went away. It never went away. And they brainwashed us, indoctrinated us into thinking for the past 100 years that it went away. It never went away. And it's never going to go away. This is promised in the Bible that the last and final empire will be the Roman Empire, for better or worse, for most part worse, for most of us. Although you could be under a different empire if you wanted. Although, if we were all under the Chinese monarchies, of course it would be terrible for us, just because of that. But on top of that, believe me, the monarchs of Eurasia would unite to beat the living crap out of China. China realized this. They had continuous wars with the West already, when we don't pay attention to. They definitely are involved. They have joy and glee in the fact that they're going to take the revenge off of we the people, the masses, the slave class of Western civilization. But with the poisonous vials and their things that they poke into people, whether it's up their nose or in their skin or whatever. They put their poison and they play, and they're really good. I mean, remember Deer Hunter and Russian Roulette? I mean, they're good at that one. Heartless about it too. Not all of them, but you know, an awful lot of them, because when you live in a atheistic, basically a member of this satanic system under the influence of the spirit of the serpent. Why, they even have a dragon for their symbol, just like Rome has, and it's just like the inner city, Exchequer, and the inner city of London, and the Rothschilds, and etc., etc. You notice they don't have a dragon, which is interesting, because on that continent, some folks discovered something. And let's look at this as I'm getting sidetracked here. And boy, I'm good at getting sidetracked. But if you look at this thing, and you go on Google if you latest video, if it's allowed to get uploaded. I'm always taking the chances of whether I get strikes or marked for copyright things and all that, but the problem is I don't know what else to do. Anyways, this image here, and you look, there's the eye, and there's the horn on top of it, there's the mouth. Whatever this thing was, some people was the Leviathan. I'm not saying that right. Leviathan. I guess it's Leviathan. But anyways, a great beast that fell in this place, and maybe not. Maybe it's just an optical illusion. My bet is that it's not an optical illusion, that it is real, and that this is part of the spirit of this world, is part of the world. This thing that it seems like wherever you go, the brotherhood of the serpent or the snake, this thing at one time reigned over us, or maybe it's still, or has a something else, maybe a child, something that now reigns over us, but it hides behind the moon or the sun or whatever. Maybe it, I don't know how they keep this how this beast must have feasted upon the living in this world for a very long time. It's huge. You know what I mean? And so we can go. I want to do this again because I think this is very symbolic. It cannot be nothing more than symbolic. So you see this, as you go further and further. So this is this is up here. This is Russia. This is the upper part of Russia. Now the upper part of Russia, oh my God, this looks like a pig, doesn't it? The tail. Pig land. Isn't that bizarre? Pig chewing on like a boar. Anyways, right here in the upper part of Russia, here's your China, here's your upper part of Russia, and Kazakhstan, and of course over here is where they're having the battle in the Ukraine right here, and it's really, if you just divide that, this is Russia versus the West. Who's going to be Pontifex Maximus, the king? All these people worship a certain type of a serpent or a dragon, which I think at one time did exist, and ironically enough, it died. Yet they still have some kind of obsession with it. Let's see if I can find it again now that I... There it is. See the eye, the mouth, the head, and there's the body. I don't know, was this the tail or something? Is this something, the tail here? What happened here? It's simply an optical illusion. Is it something that some artist were in? Did somebody fake this? Whatever this is, the serpent seems to be a big issue with these people in the know. A big issue. Where did I go with this? Okay. So then we got this crazy thing. Okay. In the digital era, in the mass media and communication, we reflected also on the level of poverty and conflict and suffering of so many brothers and sisters in different parts of the world as a consequence of the arms race, the social injustice, corruption, inequality, moral decline, terrorism, discrimination, extremism, and many other causes. That sounds just like what all the monarchs do inflict on us. It seems like human nature. From our fraternal, Freemason, and open discussions, and from the meeting that expressed profound hope and a bright future for all human beings. Really, the idea of this document of human fraternity was conceived. It is in a text that has been given honest and serious thought so as to be a joint declaration of good and heartfelt aspirations. It is a document that invites all persons who have faith in God and faith in human fraternity to unite and work together so that it may serve as a guide for future generations to advance a culture of mutual respect in the awareness of the great divine grace that makes all human beings brothers and sisters. And this man's supposed to be a representative of Jesus and his teachings, his gospel. And instead, what is he doing? He's doing the old Jesuitical, the J. Crew thing, poisoning the well, poisoning the truth. And let's all have just a universal religion with that's never going to happen. Document in the name of God, but he never says the name. Well, what's the name of God? Come on, dude. In the name of God, in the name of God, His Holiness, the Grand Imam of El Zaro, so His Holiness, I guess the name of God is Pope Francis in his mind, because they never say Jesus Christ. They never say it. They never say Yahweh, or they never say Jehovah. They never say Jesus Christ, or Yahshua, or whatever. It doesn't come close. Just name God, whatever that is, who has created all human beings equal in rights, duties, and dignity. Really? Such a lie. Who has called them to live together as brothers and sisters, to fill the earth and make known the values of goodness, love, and peace. In the name of innocent human life that God has forbidden to kill, and yet you see the influence of even the Vatican on abortion. And at any given time, if they wanted the West and the East to stop abortion, all he have to do is say something. All he would have to say is, as Pontifex Maximus Caesar, Pope, or the Roman Western wing of the Roman Empire, I denounce abortion. And imagine how fast it would stop. Oh, Mike, he has no power. Well, I hate to disappoint you. He is Caesar, and he has all power. So, let's think twice about what he means by this. Because isn't in the name of innocent human life that God has forbidden to kill, affirming that whoever kills a person is like one who kills the whole of humanity. That doesn't say anything. There's nothing scriptural. Where do you get that nonsense from? Because it certainly isn't biblical. And whoever saves a person is like one who saves the whole humanity. Oh. Such not Jesuitical sophistry here. It's nasty. In the name of the poor and destitute, marginalized, and those most in need, whom God has commanded us to help as a duty required of all persons, especially the wealthy and of means. Well, what are the wealthy and the means decided to do? What was their response to all this? Well, what just happened in the past 2 years? And the Great Reset and the eugenics. The hurting and the poisoning and war and everything else. Oh yeah, let's say one thing and talk out of one side of your mouth, and another thing is let's have wars. And believe me, when it comes to the oligarchs and the monarchies of Western Europe and Eurasia, and this war that's going on, whether it's through I can't even say the word, but you know what's going on the past 2 years if you hadn't paid any attention. The number of people have died that didn't need to die, based on from those people whose symbol is the double-headed, the double snake, the serpent, the brotherhood of the serpent, and get paid extra to make sure that someone doesn't make it through these past 2 years. Yeah. Justice. What has happened in this past 2 years? These are people that follow this guy too, by the way. Whether you like to hear it or not, Bill Gates is Roman Catholic. He's become mega rich. These other clowns, whether they admit to being Catholic, are all Jesuit trained and controlled. And that's where like people like Elon Musk can become the richest. He's the richest guy one moment. Or the other guy is Amazon. He becomes the richest guy. Because they're all members of Brotherhood of the Serpent and the Snake. Launching phallic symbols into the sky. Destroying any opportunity and progress, real progress. Wasting precious time and energy on such things as things that are supposed to run by lithium batteries. Caring so much about the environment. It would cost more energy and coal and fuel to run these electric cars than if we just left things as is and just improve the cars to have better gas mileage. But that we can't afford and don't want. We can afford, but the Saudis and all the other, and Russia and everybody else doesn't want you to have cars that have great gas mileage because they want to sell their gas. And it goes on and on and on. The hypocrisy, the lying and deception and the illusions. You remember, the Iman Caesar over there, Pope Francis, to the call no man father, call no man rabbi, call no man master. So what do we have? A bunch of guys that want to be called rabbi, fathers, and masters running the show. I mean, it is a big issue, and it's not me. People say, "Oh, you're just being judgmental." No, I'm not being judgmental. I'm being honest, and the rest of us need to be honest too. Nothing's going to change as long as we have the same priestcraft and the same clowns and the same people with all their uber rich money ruling over us. Now, with true followers of Jesus, have one King, one Lord. There's only one. There's only one God. It's Him. There's no rabbis. There's no masters. There's none. He's the Father. He's the Father. He's the Father. He's the Son. He's all things. He's all in all. He's God. He's the answer, not these people, and not anybody else who claims to be the answer. I guarantee you, there's some dude who's a welder somewhere in the middle of wherever it may be, has more of an answer as a world than the Pope will ever have, as far as things working right, properly. And the thing is, if anybody that wants to rule over you, they've got to ask questions why they want to rule over you. Oh, these guys are all going to offer such things as peace, security, Big Brother. Okay, so in the name of the poor, the destitute, and marginalized, and those that have most in need, whom God has commanded us to help as a duty required all persons, especially the wealthy and of means. That means you, Vatican. That means you, Prince Henry or Philip or Andrew or whatever the thing you are over there, the Queen of England. It means all the rest of you, dukes and duchesses and kings and queens throughout the world. That means all of you. Instead of doing that, what are they doing? Let's have increased surveillance. Let's take away more people's freedoms and freedom of expression. Let's censor more people. I hope you see the contradiction, and this is how Jesuits use. Say one thing and do the other. Say one thing and do the other. You know what I mean? This is how the practitioners of black magic work. In the name of the orphans and the widows and refugees, well, they made a lot more refugees, haven't they? Those exiled from their homes and their countries will attend FEMA camps. In the name of the victims of wars and persecution and injustice, in the name of the weak and those who live in fear and in prison of war, and those tortured at any part of the world without distinction. Sounds like the Inquisition and their endless wars. In the name of the people who have lost their security, peace, and possibility of living together, becoming victims of destruction, calamity, and war, in the name of human fraternity that embraces all human beings, unites them, and renders them equal. Yeah, I bet they really believe that. I bet Pope Francis, and I bet that Iman dude think that they're equal to the average Joe that's walking, down the road right now, looking for his next meal. I bet they just find them equal. In the name of the fraternity, Freemasonry torn apart by policies of extremism, like Well, we find in all the Abrahamic religions and division, and also the monarchies and the uber rich and the people with all the money, and say what needs to be done by systems of unrestrained profit and by hateful ideological tendencies that manipulate the actions and the future of man and women. Well, all you people who are Roman Catholics, you might as well put your, hang your heads low. He's talking about you people. You got her. All right. Let's get back to this thing. In the name of people who have lost the security, people, blah, 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 blah. In the name of freedom. Wait a minute, they don't want freedom. Well, I don't want obviously, they don't want freedom for us. Look at what they've done since 2019. Just systematically have taken away more and more people's freedom. Freedom for what? As God has given to all men, human beings, creating them free and distinguishing them by this gift, by the name of justice and mercy, the foundation of prosperity, the cornerstone of faith, in the name of all persons of goodwill in the presence of every part of the world. Notice there's nothing about Jesus. I'm going to take a little break here and get back to this. Okay, let's get back to this Declaration of New World Religion in 2019. Of course, we know a lot about 19, don't we? And it was specifically dedicated and offered up. Supposedly, their Abrahamic family house would soon supposed to be built today. I mean, not today, this year. And that's somehow going to make a big difference. Anyways. So in the name of persons of goodwill present in every part of the world, in the name of God, and everything stated thus far, Al-Azhar al-Sharif, and the Muslims of the East and West, together with the Catholic Church and Catholics of the East and the West, declare an adoption of a culture of dialogue as a path to mutual cooperation, the code of conduct and reciprocal understanding as a method and standard. Now, how come it doesn't talk about the third party here? That group that you're not allowed to talk about. And what was the name of the God? We who believe in God, which is not the same God. See, this is the problem. There's not the same God. Well, maybe their God is the same. Maybe it is. Maybe it's all the same. Because it is it is the fraternity of Lucifer. It is the same God. Maybe it is Lucifer. Maybe at the top it's all the same God, Lucifer. In the final meeting with him and his judgment and his basis on our religious and moral responsibility through this document, call upon ourselves and upon the leaders of the world, as well as the architects of international policy and world economy, which amazingly they decided to destroy immediately right after this encyclical, if you will, this message. Call upon ourselves, upon the leaders of the world, as well as the architects the international policy and world economy, to work strenuously to spread the culture of tolerance and living together in peace, to intervene at the earliest opportunity to stop the shedding of innocent blood and to bring an end to wars and conflicts and environmental decay and moral and cultural decline in the world is presently experiencing. So what has happened? And things have gotten worse. We call upon intellectuals, philosophers, religious figures, artists, the media professionals, men and women of culture in every part of the world to rediscover the value of peace, justice, goodness, and beauty in human fraternity. For the most part, most people already have that. We don't need that from Pontifex Maximus or the Iman. So, and we got to understand with the Jesuit sophistry, they say one thing and do the other. Human fraternity and the coexistence in order to confirm the importance of these values as anchors of salvation for all. Really? And to promote them everywhere. Anchors of salvation for all. What is salvation? Is salvation ending up having a blood clot in your brain and having a stroke and dying after taking the poisonous cup in the poignard? How about is it raising the food prices and causing him difficulty for people who, the average person who just simply wants to, exist and thrive is not interested in anybody else's, what they do or say or do, just want to live their life and raise their family? Wait a minute. Who's doing all the meddling here? Caesar, who's doing all the meddling? This declaration setting out from the profound consideration of our contemporary reality, valuing its success and solidarity with its suffering and disasters and calamities, believes firmly that among the most important causes of the crisis of modern world are the desensitized human conscience, a distancing from religious values and prevailing individualism, accompanied by materialistic philosophies that deify the human person and introduce worldly and moral material values in place of supreme and transcendental principles. So you're a bad person if you show individualism, distancing from religious values. Well, we've seen from a lot of religious values what happens. The priestcraft get fat and wealthy, along with their stooges, and the rest of us suffer. But somehow we want to go back to that. Let me understand. Let me remind you something. Religion can't give you a personal relationship with God. You have to have a desire to have that and search Him. Religion is designed to snare you, to keep you from having that. Well, and materialism, materialistic values, philosophies that deify the human person and introduce worldly and material values in place of supreme, his values, the Enam's values, the big chief rabbi values, while recognizing the positive steps taken by our modern civilization in the field of science, technology, medicine, industry, and welfare, and especially the developed countries, we wish to emphasize that associated with the historic advancements and great and valued are as they are, there exists both a moral deterioration that influences international action and weakens the spiritual values and responsibilities. So force everybody to wear a mask, force everybody to take something that's proven to cause more damage than good, that killed my mom, that made people I know magnetic, and get paid big bucks from Pfizer, huh? All this contributes to a general feeling of frustration, isolation, and desperation, leading many to fall either into the vortex of atheism, agnostic, or religious extremism, and into blind and fanatic extremism, which ultimately encourages forms of dependency and individual or collective self-destruction. Oh, this is the history of the Vatican and Roman Catholicism and the priestcraft. It killed so many people, it's ridiculous. Not to say that Muslims would be any better or the other tribe. History shows that religious extremism, national extremism, and also intolerance have produced in the world, be it in the East or West, what might be referred to as signs of a third world war being fought piecemeal. So, why fight it piecemeal? I might as well go all the way, right, Pope? And isn't that what we're experiencing right now? World War III? And I don't see any denunciation of any of this stuff that matters from the Vatican on down, because they're responsible. In several parts of the world and in many tragic circumstances, these signs have begun to be painfully apparent, as in those situations where the precise number of victims, widows, and orphans are unknown. We just like the Spellman's War in Vietnam, and the millions that were killed. How about what's going on and what happened to all the other North African and Middle East countries? Who benefited the most from all that? It certainly wasn't. What about all the people who lost, like Lebanon, or Libya, excuse me? And they had this, they took turned it into a number one trade is slave human trafficking. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. We see, in addition, other religions preparing to become theaters of new conflict, with outbreaks of tension and buildup of armies and ammunition. What other religions? I know that we see that going on with... I see what's going on here. The Vatican, along with the ultra-extreme Zionists, along with the extreme Muslims, are getting together to fight who? The East. Because it's all about who will have Pontifex Maximus, who will have Caesar, who will be the center of the New World Order. And hence, that's what we see what's going on in Ukraine. Most people won't hear of that, though, until it's too late. Outbreaks of tension and a buildup of arms and ammunition, and all this in a global context, overshadowed by uncertainty, delusionment, fear of future, and control of narrow-minded economic interests. To wipe them all out. We likewise affirm the major political crisis situation of injustice and lack of equitable distribution of natural resources, which only a rich minority benefit from. So let's make everybody drive electric cars, which is going to mean that uber rich are going to be able to do it anyways. To determine the majority of the people on the earth have generated and continue to generate vast number of poor, infirm, and diseased persons. And thank you, modern medicine. This leads to a catastrophic crisis. The various countries have fallen victim to, despite their natural resources and resourcefulness of young people, which characterize these nations. In fact, in the face of such crisis, the result in death of millions of children wasted away from poverty and hunger. It sure is what's going on. And I don't see the Vatican doing a damn thing about it except getting fat and rich off it. There are unacceptable silence on the international level. When the Vatican and the Pope Francis and the archbishops, the diviners of the serpent, take responsibility for their actions, there will be change. But until that happens, they're not doing that. They're blaming it all on the rest of us. It is clear in this context how the family of the fundamental nucleus of society and humanity is essential in bringing children into the world. So we'll promote pedophilia and different sexual perversions, wokeism, and raise them and educate them and provide them with a solid moral foundation of domestic security. To attack the institution of the family, to regard it with contempt, or to doubt its important role is one of the most threatening evils of our era. So why don't you stop promoting it, Jesuit? We affirm also the importance of awakening religious awareness and the need for revive this awareness in the hearts of the new generations through sound education, adherence to moral values, and upright religious teachings. In this way, we can confront tendencies that are individualistic, selfish, conflicting, and also address radicalism and blind extremism in all its forms and expressions, except when it comes to their own, that coming out of the Vatican, that coming out of the synagogues and the mosques. Their expressions of individualism, their extreme radicalism, extreme blind extremism, that's okay. The first and most important aim of religions is to believe in God, to honor Him and invite all men and women to believe that this universe depends on a God who governs it. See, the problem is, who is God? And the problem is with this fraternity, Freemasonry, Luciferianism, the God is a man, not a spirit. He is the creator who has formed us with his divine wisdom and has granted us the gift of life to protect it. It is a gift that no one has a right to take away. Then why are you forcing the poisonous injection into the vial? Certainly, with all your wisdom and all your intel, you know exactly what's going on, and you are promoting it, not fighting against this nonsense. But most of what threatens us are the lies and deceptions and the theories and constructs that come right out of the Jesuits and Freemasonry and the Vatican. But will you deal with that, Pope Francis? When you start dealing with that, then we know that you're serious about it, and this is not just Jesuit sophistry. But what has happened since this has been unleashed? There is, just in the United States alone, they had just a $30 trillion stolen from people's pensions and retirement funds that they worked hard for to raise their families, the nucleus of the family. Destructions of any affluence that it helps benefit the family. More environmental terrorism and more environmental. Look at this. This goes on. All these things that he said. Oh, we got to do something about it. Look at this. It is a gift that no one has a right to take away, threaten, or manipulate to suit oneself. Indeed, everyone must safeguard this gift of life from its beginning up to the natural end. We therefore condemn all those practices that are a threat to life, such as genocide. So we're doing genocide, mass genocide. What would you rename it? Call it democide. Then it's okay, huh? Acts of terrorism? Well, geez, who's the most terroristic of them all? Forced displacement? Well, what do you think's going on? Who's behind it all? The same person that allegedly wrote this. I think this is a confession. Human organ trafficking? Well, geez, number one place in the world apparently is over there in this place called Ukraine. Abortion and euthanasia? Well, we see that happening all over the place since this has been written. Moreover, resultantly, they declare that religions must never incite war. So what do? They're having the war, religious war over there in Ukraine, with between the two heads of the Phoenix, the two heads of the Roman Empire, along with their their scapegoats. These tragic realities are the consequence of a deviation from religious teachings. They result in the political manipulation of religions and form interpretations made by religious groups who, in the course of history, have taken advantage of the power of religious sentiment in the hearts of men and women in order to make them act in a way that it has nothing to do with the truth of religion. This is done for the purpose of achieving objectives that are political, economic, fanaticism, and refrain from using the name of God to justify acts of mercy and justify the acts of murder, exile, terrorism, and oppression. How's come everywhere we go where the Catholicism is, all these religions are, this is exactly what happens. The same religions are claiming to, okay, let's see. Still, what has happened since this letter? Nothing of these things have just ramped up and got worse, haven't they? We have asked this on the basis of our common belief in God, who did not create men and women to be killed or to fight one another, nor to be tortured or humiliated in their lives and circumstances. God Almighty, which is Jesus, has no need to be defended by anyone and does not want his name to be used to terrorize people. This document, in accordance with the previous international documents, that have emphasized the importance of the role of religion and the construction of world peace, uphold the following. The firm conviction that authentic teachings of religions invite us to remain rooted in the values of peace. Do what I say, not what I do. Justify justice and love, and to reawaken religious awareness among young people, so that future generations may be protected from the realm of materialistic thinking, and from dangerous policies that of unbridled greed and indifference that are based on the law of force and not on the force of law. Well, that sounds very Jesuitical there. First of all, you guys got to stop lying to your parishioners and to your people. The priestcraft have to stop lying. Stop making up stuff. Stop telling people the world's going to end. Stop saying all this fat about this and that. Stop it. Stop lying. Secondly, tell people the truth of what Jesus taught. That means all three religious institutions involved in this. Start teaching the truth. That's all you have to do. And give people an honest opportunity to accept it or not. You see, you can't teach morals and values if it's all hypocrisy and it's based on lies. If your belief system is really not your belief system, but is a system of deception and control and manipulation, then you really don't have much of a say in anything. Freedom is the right for every person. Each individual enjoys the freedom of belief, thought, expression, and action. Wait a minute. I thought you're not allowed to have this individualism. Pluralism and diversity of religious, color, sex, race, and language are willed by God in His wisdom, through which He created human beings. The divine wisdom of the source from which the right to freedom and belief and the freedom to be different derives, therefore, the fact that people are forced to adhere to certain religion or culture must be rejected. So what do? We turned around and did the complete opposite to everybody in the past 2 years so far. No freedom of thought, no freedom of expression. No, you divided us up into the most absurd of things and forced a new form of superstition on us. It's the end is the innocent killing the innocent for your sick eugenics program. Justice based on mercy. Where are we going with this? Therefore, the fact that people are forced to adhere to certain religion or culture must be rejected. Really? As to the imposition of a cultural way of life that others do not accept. Justice based on mercy is the path to follow in order to achieve a dignified life which every human being has a right. I totally agree with that. In dialogue and understanding, widespread promotion of culture of tolerance. So we go to this extreme wokeism, and it is anything that's absurd we're supposed to just accept. Even if it violates the teachings of God and the truths, the principles of life. Acceptance of others and living together peacefully would contribute significantly to reducing many economic, social, political, and environmental problems that weigh so heavily on the large part of humanity. Dialogue among believers means coming together in a vast space of spiritual, human, and shared social values, and from here transmitting the highest moral virtues that religions aim for. It also means avoiding unproductive discussions. The protection of places of worship, synagogues, church, and mosques is the duty guarded and guaranteed by religions, human values, laws, and international agreements. Every attempt to attack places of worship and threaten them by violent assault, bombing, and destruction is a deviation from the teachings of religion as well as a clear violation of international law. Save our religion, not you people. Terrorism is deplorable and threatens the security of people. And by they in the east and the west, the north and south, and disseminates panic, terror, and pessimism. But this is not due to religion. Oh, really? Religious leaders, which makes up your religion. Even when terrorists instrumentalize it, it is due rather to the accumulation of incorrect interpretations of religious texts. Well, man, you guys are the worst of the worst, you Catholics. We need to stop doing it. And all your daughter churches, stop lying about what Jesus said and what he did. It's your damn book. Why are you lying about it? And to police policies linked to hunger, poverty, injustice, oppression, and pride. This is why it is so necessary to stop supporting terrorist movements fueled by financing and the provisions of weapons and strategies, and attempt to justify these movements even using the media. So why don't you openly say this on a consistent basis if you really believe this, Pope Francis? We should hear this all the time from you. All these things all these must be regarded as international crimes that threaten security and world peace. And such terrorism must be condemned in all its forms and expressions. So why you support the World Economic Forum in the UN, Pope Francis? The concept of citizenship is based on the equality of rights and duties. Oh, so now you're going to tell us what our duties are. Under which, our rights, under which all enjoy justice. It is therefore crucial to establish in our societies the concept of full citizenship and reject the discriminatory use of the term minorities, which engender feelings of isolation and inferiority. Its misuse paves the way for hostility and discord. It undoes such successes and takes away the religious and civil rights of some citizens who are thus discriminated against. So it'll make the discrimination based on whether you wear a face muzzle or not. Never once we promote that. They go right from there into promoting that. Good relations between East and West are indispensable, necessary for both. They must not be neglected so that each can be enriched by the other's culture through fruitful exchanges and dialogues. The West can discover the East's remedies for those spiritual and religious maladies. What about health maladies? I'm going to get rid of all that. It's just religious. That are caused by the prevailing materialism. That wasn't going on 200 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago. It's just uniquely now, because people have an opportunity to go, maybe actually be their own person for once, instead of following blindly the false teachers, the vipers and the serpents to their death, spiritual and physical. All right, the West can discover the East remedies for those spiritual and religious maladies that are caused by the prevailing materialism. The East can find in the West many elements that can help free it from weakness, division, and conflict and scientific, technical, and cultural decline. Well, it sounds like we're going through that ourselves in the West. What are you talking about? You bankrupt us all, forces in some insane war. You don't say anything about that now, won't you? It's important to pay attention to religious, cultural, and historical differences that are a vital component to shaping the characteristic culture and civilization of the East. It is likewise important to reinforce the bond of fundamental human rights in order to help ensure a dignified life for all men and women of the East and the West, avoiding the political politics of double standards, double speech. Doublespeak. It is an essential requirement to recognize the right of women to education and employment. I think we've done that. And to recognize the freedom of to exercise their own political rights, blah, blah, blah. Moreover, efforts must be made for free women from historical and social conditioning that runs contrary to the principles of their faith and dignity. It is also necessary to protect women from sexual exploitation and from being treated as merchandise or objects of pleasure or financial gain. What about children, Pope Francis? Mithra, priest of Mithraism. Accordingly, an end must be brought to all those inhuman and vulgar practices that denigrate the dignity of women. Efforts must be made to modify the laws to prevent women from fully enjoy their rights. The protection of the fundamental rights of children to grow up in a family environment, to receive nutrition, education, and support are the duties of family and society. Such duties must be guaranteed and protected so that they are not overlooked or denied to any child in any part of the world. All those practices that violate the dignity and rights of the children must be denounced. So we didn't denounce it. Now we're going to do. It is equally important to be vigilant against the dangers that they are exposed to, particularly the digital world, and to consider as a crime trafficking of their innocence and violation of their youth. And don't forget about all the Roman Catholic priests who've been buggering little boys and girls. When are they going to finally pay? When is justice finally going to be done, Pope Francis? No one's going to take you serious about any of this until you do something serious about what's going on in your own church. The protection of the rights of the elderly, the weak, and the disabled, and the oppressed is a religious and social obligation that must be guaranteed and defended through strict legislation and implementation of relevant international agreements, like poisoning everybody who's in a nursing home and killing them off and getting rid of them, right? That's what we've been witnessing in the West. To this end, by mutual cooperation, the Catholic Church and Al-Azhar announces and a pledge to convey this document to the authorities and influential leaders and persons of religion all over the world, and appropriate regional and international organizations with civil societies, religious institutions, leading thinkers. They further pledge to make known the principles contained in the Declaration at all regional and international levels, while requesting that these principles be translated into policies, decisions, legislative texts, courses, study, and materials to be circulated. El-Hazar and the Catholic Church asked this document become an object of research and reflection in all schools, universities, and institutions of formation, like spiritual formation, thus helping to educate the new generations to bring goodness and peace to others and to be defenders wherever of the rights of the oppressed and the least of our brothers and sisters. In conclusion, our aspiration is that this declaration may constitute an invitation to reconciliation and fraternity, like Freemasonry, among all believers, indeed among believers and non-believers, and among all people of goodwill. This declaration may be an appeal to every upright conscience that rejects deplorable violence and blind extremism. That sounds like religion itself. An appeal to those who cherish the values of tolerance and fraternity that are promoted and encouraged by religions. So let's make sure that everyone's being censored, and anybody says anything that contradicts the will of the authorities, of Big Brother, whether it be religion, government, whatever, you will be isolated, silenced, and banned. You'll be pigeonholed and blacklisted, and you'll be denied a voice to anybody. Your channels will be taken down, and etc. Your voice will be, you'll be shadow banned to the point that no one will ever hear anything you have to say. And it's only gotten worse since this declaration. And the things haven't gotten better, they've gotten worse. The declaration may constitute an invitation to reconciliation and fraternity among all believers, indeed among believers and non-believers, among all people of goodwill. This declaration may be an appeal to every upright conscience and rejected deplorable violence and blind extremism, and appeal to all those who cherish the values of tolerance and fraternity that are promoted and encouraged by religions. This declaration may be a witness to the greatness of faith in God that unites divided hearts and elevates human soul. This declaration may be a sign of the closeness between East and West, between North and South, and between all who believe that God has created us under to understand one another, cooperate with one another, and live as brothers and sisters who love one another. This is what we hope and seek to achieve with this aim of finding a universal peace that all can enjoy in this life. Abu Dhabi, 4 February 2019. His Holiness Pope Francis and Grand Imam, Grand Master of Al-Zahar, Ahmad al-Tayyib. It sounds really great, but I hope you recognize the contradictions and the hypocrisy that's actually coming out of this letter and the movement. And you certainly can go online and see this Abrahamic family house of fun. There's a lot of things like chain link, like fences. See that? They have these things that almost look like scales of a serpent. Now look at that. I mean, just the way that it looks, these things, they look like spirits and angels or something. And that's just the mosque, I believe. All those chains there. That doesn't look good to me. That reminds me of the scales of a serpent myself, but anyways,